prisoners is people who are incarcerated as the result of their beliefs against the status quo. And I should name it political. In this sense, these are persons that have been arrested for supporting and being members of the National Unity Platform, but most also importantly, aligning with our generational leader, Kyagulanyi Robert Sentamu. So who they are members of the National Unity Platform who vigorously participated in the last campaign. I think 45% of those young comrades of ours were part of the campaign trail. You remember that we had the arrest of our campaign trail after the Luuka riots, but then later on the 31st of November 2020, we had the roundup of the entire campaign team. However, these were not the arrests that had happened first. There had been a connotation, there had been a spring of such abductions where some of even those persons that were abducted up to today have not been found, and those were categorized as the missing 18. Highlighting of them is Chibalama John Bosco, Damulira, Kanata Muhammad, among others. And what has been settled is that now these were political prisoners because they particularly identified with the politics of opposing the status quo.
You know, opposing the status quo and being supporters of NUP and your generation leader is not a crime, because if that was a crime and it's perceived to be a crime, many of you, Honorable Mufumbiro, would be maybe arrested by the people who are running the show now.
We will get there, because even with these coerced confessions and concessions, then arrests must be made, because these concessions are of capital offenses and they must have had masterminds. But the reason why you will not see such arrests is because these coerced confessions are simply suffocating the truth. So even the arrests, I don't know whether I will be arrested today, because there is pocket arresting. They choose this one this day, they choose the other one the other day. So my being not arrested now is not a guarantee that I cannot be arrested, because it is happening. My brother Atidde,
your party is a mass party, right?
Yes.
With the tens of thousands of millions of supporters.
Yes,
and,
definitely.
And all of them, really, majority of them, millions of them are still eating free and moving around.
In Turkey, they arrested over 77,000. You see, the dictator is charged at the times, but many of them that were opposing the system of Erdogan were still existent. But time came when there was dissent and attempted coup, and 77,000 were thrown in. So it is not about the numbers, it is about the willingness and act of the state to commit felony and disorient themselves from respecting humanity, and that they do at their convenience. As I have said, they have done this. Today we are talking about these that are having coerced confessions, suffocating the truth, born out of fear. But then we also have those that are fresh. I have told you, Bobby Young has not been there for years. It's just months.
So you're saying these are coerced confessions?
Yeah, these are coerced.
Is that what they have told you in camera, or this is what you perceive it to be?
One, there has been a pattern of this rebel regime outfit to do that over time. You know what happened in 2016 to Mufumbiro and his entire team. Only the Prime Minister refused to confess. You know what was done to the young people of Kayunga riots. I personally had one young man, a mechanic called Mayanja Abu. He comes from the lineage of Abu Kachama Mayanja. He was picked from the garage opposite now CBS, and then taken through all that tumultuous prosecution of an offense he had not been part of. So in dictatorship, where there is dissent, they will arrest you for political reasons, but then dress you in different offenses committed. But what is very disturbing...
What I'm trying to ask you, Honorable Mufumbiro, that I really wanted a clarity and answer, is that, is this what they have told you, that they have been coerced to plead guilty on crimes they've never committed, or this is your perception that they were coerced?
No, we know that they have been circumstantially coerced. We know that also there has been an involvement of high profile.
How do you know that? How do you get to know that? What I'm asking is, you could say this so and so came to our office and said, I had to plead guilty. Yesterday, yes.
At court, I think it was Buganda Road, Sami Okanya, one of the directors of the Mighty family, was presented in court. He's also a political prisoner, arrested for these recent demonstrations about corruption. And in court, he attested on oath to the judicial officer about a person occupying the office of a minister of youth, State Minister of State for Youth and Children, Mr. Baram Barugahare, having gone to prison. They called out Sam Okanya against his will, and then he started pushing him to subjugation and accept the offenses, apologize, and he even went to the extent of picking his phone close to a prisoner and calling the sitting judicial officer presiding over the matter of Sami Okanya. And this has been, and I've had the minister accept this. This is out of all the whims of natural justice and the conversation, because this was in court and it was on oath. And I've seen the minister on particular interviews attesting to have done this act. Calling out a judicial officer.
Thank you very much. You're giving us evidence of a particular case for which you can defend of somebody that is on record. I'm asking about the supporters of 2020 who are...
This is where, now, because you wanted evidence, I wanted to give you one that is attachable to these events. These people have been visited by Balam Barugahare and certain presidential advisor, a lady who is a presidential advisor called Fulfiga. They have been visiting these persons, convincing them. These people have been isolated. Sometimes their lawyers have not accessed them. These persons have been painted a picture of blackmail to subdue them and suffocate the truth, because they have no offenses that they have committed. And this pattern has existed. You remember somebody called Kabaziruka, where we all have now the constitutional ruling on the trial of civilians in the general court martial. What should be peculiar about these political prisoners, never than ever before, is that they are being tried in the military court martial, which is a preserve of the discipline of the military and modus operandi of the military.
All right. Thank you very much. Let me go to Honorable Emmanuel Dombo. And I want to use your words, because the way you describe the regime that he serves, the party that he serves, a rebel regime, you know, that, I mean, all those things. I know he was looking at you as you painted that picture. It's quite ugly when he paints it that way, doesn't it? Look like that way.
First and foremost, it's a pleasure for me to be here, and good morning, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. I thought it was already after midnight. Mr. Mufumbiro is my friend. We both speak for our sides, and we are paid to do so. I'm paid to speak for the work of government.
All of you are paid to speak. To speak or to speak.
And the national resistance movement.
At least.
And you know that after the IPOD negotiations, now government pays money to the parties to ensure that their staff should be well paid, to ensure the parties to ensure that they can rent or build offices, to ensure that the parties can do mobilization. The quarter has just started, and we're about to go to the Electoral Commission to pick our money. He'll pick theirs, and we shall also pick ours. I just wanted to describe the regime, how he relates with the regime.
Which he calls rebel.
Which he calls rebel, and this is what we do. But this is something we have gotten used to, because our responsibility is not to do or act for them, but to do what is civil and what is good for the people of Uganda. We believe, as young people, he started in FDC. He has been in other arrangements. Now he's in the National Unity Platform. We believe by the time he goes around, we don't know when he's coming to the National Resistance Movement, he will have learned to know how government works, how civil people deal with one another, how we relate. And I've been with him in a number of talk shows. So he's a friend, and we have engaged one another. But going back to the issues we're talking about,
civil.
We are talking about our friends who are in prison and who have been there for some time. You know, we're talking about human beings. Some of them who are missing, like they have talked about Kibalama and others. Last time when the members of parliament, led by Honorable Mpuga, stormed out of parliament, I came on the media to blame them. I said, but Honorable Mpuga, I was in parliament when Honorable Bira was beaten. She was FDC. I was NRM. But I went and protested in parliament. Why a member of parliament should be molested by the police. We stopped the budget process, and we put up a select committee to inquire into that conduct. It did not matter whether I was in NRM and she was in FDC, but she was a Ugandan.
Yes, but also police was assaulting your space. That was an attack on your space.
Absolutely, so yes.
You had an interest.
So we have to demonstrate. Now we're talking about Ugandans, and that's what I told Honorable Mpuga and friends. I said, but you go back to parliament. Because you are paid, you can even go to the courts of law. You can call the defense minister, you can invite anybody, because nobody else can do that. Now when you pretend and run away, you subject these people into harm's way. Let me tell you, have you ever been to prison? It's not an attractive place to be. Many people can talk about it laughing when they're on the media. But I want to tell you, when Jesus was arrested and Peter was asked whether he had been with him, he denied.
3 times.
Because he knew that place, he didn't know what the outcome of where he was being taken. So prison is not a good thing to be. When I was young, there used to be a song sung by Mr. Sebaduka in Luganda. They used to sing that akwagaze komera ya akiro obulogo. So prison, which you are talking about, is not a classroom. We can encourage our people to be there and take political capital out of it. But the people who are encouraging others to stay in prison and pay a price, they are busy producing children. They are busy investing. They are busy doing things.
Dombo, what do you mean encouraging people to go to prison? You mean the likes of Mufumbiro and the leaders of NUP would want the young people to get to prison?
Have you been reading their statements I've been releasing about those people who are in prison? So any effort that can be done either by religious leaders or people of goodwill or any people, because me, I'm a Christian, I don't know what faith he subscribes to. But I remember reading in Genesis when God wanted to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. There was a conversation between Abraham and God to say, even if there are 50, save. Even if it is only 1. But when you read the Bible and you go deeper, you discover that Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham had a cousin called Lot, whom he vehemently wanted to save, and indeed God sent an angel to go and save him. When these children, young people, were arrested and taken to prison, they were there with the relatives of some of the leaders of national inter-platform.
But you see, when I like the way how you use the biblical analogy, because if I listen to Honorable Mufumbiro's characterization of NRM now, you have done this country to Sodom and Gomorrah, and God is about to nuke us.
That is his view. But I told you that as people did not go to Sodom and Gomorrah to benefit. Because whereas he calls it Sodom and Gomorrah, which God destroyed, for them every morning they go to the Electoral Commission to pick things from Sodom and Gomorrah, which he describes. That's what I was telling you, that whereas he once said this because he pleases the people who listen to him, the real conduct, we are all different, and we, at the end of the day, we go together to go and account to the Electoral Commission.
You see, all of you, he serves in Parliament, you've been to Parliament, you're all honorable members.
I don't serve in Parliament.
No, he's not. He's not. You served in Parliament, he's a high-ranking official of NOP. I can imagine, you know, the words he says are supposed to be weighty, both of you. So when he says that, and has evidence that the minister was involved in trying to, you know, get into the judicial process by going to Luzira and calling out somebody, calling the judicial officer, this is how things should move, then that's not a state that is in the right direction, is it?
You know, that's why I asked you whether you have ever been to prison. And you know the price you pay by being there. One time, my son was arrested. He was learning to drive, but didn't have a permit. And when he opened the door of the vehicle, it knocked a border and he fell. So the police arrested him. I went to the police in Mukono and asked the police officer, say, yes, this is a minor traffic offense. Can I go with my son? Can he be given bond so that he can go home? We shall come back tomorrow. I'm a responsible person. I will bring him back. The first officer refused until I used other means, and there was a more senior order which came in from somewhere further.
Powers from above.
And the police officer released my son. Now, the following day when we came to meet, when I returned my son to the police, and they had released the prisoners who had been in the cells, my son showed me a prisoner and he said, Daddy, I want you to thank that prisoner. Because when I entered the cell, they wanted to sodomize me, but that man protected me. Then I said, so this is what happens in the cells. This is a confession, and I went to the prisoner, and I thanked him for protecting my son, because in the cells where they had been incarcerated. So prison is not heaven, because so many things happen which we don't know and which you can't see. So any effort, whether it is done by Balaam Balugahare, whether it is the Archbishop praying for those people to come out, whether it is magnanimity by the head of state or anybody.
Or whether it is coercion, like Mr. Mufumbiro is saying.
That one can only be stated by them when they come back. When those people get released, look for them. They'll come and tell their story. I don't have any reason to speculate or to talk for them. But I want to tell you, to me, the Christianity that I read, when you look at the current law practices, recently, Justice Owinyidolo was launching the alternative dispute mechanism. How can we resolve the disputes that we have without going through the judicial processes? There are so many things that are being tried. These have been tried in the Bible, they have been tried in the Quran, under Islam, now under the traditional dispute mechanism. People are looking, is there a way we can build the relationships amongst people without going through the non-judicial processes? So, that thing called the justice, what? The way he called him, that giving free justice to people, doing this, people can get surety, anything that can be done to save somebody from prison, it is something I would recommend myself. And if my brother tomorrow is in prison, I'm a member of the National Resistance Movement. But if lacked a surety, I'll come and stand surety for him.
So how do you respond?
It is laughable, but again, I'm very excited this evening. You see, there are so many things we say out there, and people judge us by our age. Others will quickly dismiss us with certain blackmail that confers them. But we have said these things. He doesn't know, but there are times we wanted to pray, we have desired to pray for these people, and even the prayers have been stopped. There are times...
Can you pray in your house?
Well, now you are beginning to also categorize the prayer. That shows the space that we have that is very limited by his own admission. We have had a gentleman called Waiswa. I think you are very conversant with this young man. He was paraded by the chief of military intelligence, the spokesperson of the army, and the deputy of military intelligence. The young man who had wounds of a flat iron on the chest. His story up to date is out there. There is desire to have the public consume, be gullible to consumption of half-baked information and blackmail from the state. That young man was picked on by the army. He had been abducted. We looked out for him. We later discovered he was in the hands of the military. He was released with burnt wounds, clearly visible. Later, he was re-abducted, and then we see him resurfacing, saying a different story, that actually in the NUP, there is a system of banning of these people. And the narrative, I wonder why now the NRA is very excited about people they imprisoned. Because first of all, before you castigate me for benefiting from the imprisonment of my colleagues, get the civility to talk to those who are in charge and doing an illegality that has been pronounced upon by court. These 4 years have had no iota of evidence produced against these suspects. None. He's feigning ignorance in terms of what is happening at the General Military Court Martial. Like he has told you, he did not know there is sodomy in the prisons. We have said, our people, we have had confessions from our people that actually they are sodomizing prisoners. And he doesn't know that it is the responsibility of the state to avoid this in whatever spaces that it comes to. We have laws in Uganda that with specificity on homosexuality. We said that these were things that were being done. Now you've listened into the case of a certain pastor here, where they tell you that particular groups of people were employed into the police force, but actually are accustomed to this dubious sexual orientation. Now, because they learn these things late, that is why they are excited about the release of people. We have been saying that they had no offense. If there was, because in law, elementary understanding, what would equate to a plea bargain, and how would you come up with a plea bargain? In any offense, there must be evidence from the prosecution that will compel a suspect from desiring this matter to go forward. However, there has not been any iota of evidence. If you look at these young people that they talk about, I saw a vague prosecution, a complete investigated file. I wonder what type of officer had written that file. Excuse me if I'm being rude. But in that file, they were talking about the petrol bombs. You know very well, there is a whole story from the done by the New Vision and a debrief to the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces that actually members of the internal security organizations were carrying out bomb attacks on the citizenry. You remember the time they threw bomb blasts on the vehicle of a former cake RDC called Sakwa? Before he was expelled from office, in Nakula they had the fiasco. The intelligence clearly stated that these were operations done by members of the internal security organization to fast track you. the issue of Zebra, if we are to remember.
The boxer. Okay.
When they murdered Zebra, the president came out, I think, around the 1st or 31st with a speech on that murder. It did not limit to the murder of Zebra. It expounded on the political prisoners that had been abducted in numbers during the Luoka riots.
Okay, let me go back to Honorable Dombo, because you've given a lot of a narrative that shows how the government is, political party, NRM and the leaders harassing members of the opposition. Obviously, there are some people, Honorable Manuel Dombo, that have disappeared, and yet they were in police custody.
And others are dead.
People like Chibalama. I've been to Chibalama's home. You see how the family is suffering. You know, these are known people, arrested and disappeared without a trace. There have been, of course, safe houses. People have been there. We have seen people before who are arrested. You know, normally when they come back, they're in a terrible, deplorable state. That really shows that sometimes the arresting officers, people have been tortured in places of detention. It doesn't look good.
It took the whole president himself to address the whole nation, to address issues of human rights abuse by people in the security. Then he has given directives. By the time the president comes out to address the nation, and also publish the directives that he had given to the members of the security, and also the Inspector General of Police coming up to acknowledge that now their schemes of work during training now includes human rights, understanding human rights, respect, and how they should be done. And by the time Parliament comes to make a law to say that even if you committed a crime, even if you are in the line of duty, but you commit an offense as Dombo, you'll be charged as such. This is acknowledging that these things happen.
But Honorable Dombo, what matters most is not the words that have been spoken, it's the action that has been taken. You can speak against them, but then the abuse, the violation of human rights continues, and that's not good.
No, but when you look at the statistics right now, the things you're talking about happened during a riotous situation.
No.
We started during a riot.
The sanctions, if I may, the sanctions of the officers, the Mwines of Mitiana and others, happened in 2020 about COVID. There is a pattern of these abductions. The Damulidas, the Chivalamas were abducted even before the election, even before nomination, during consultation. Rita Nab Kenya was murdered in Naguru in time of consultation. So it is not right to say that during riots.
Let him conclude his point.
You talked about Zebra, didn't you?
I wanted to expound. I was still expounding on Zebra.
So if you talked about Zebra, when was he murdered?
Zebra was murdered, I think, in 2020.
Yeah, that was the time of the riots when Zebra was murdered. Before the president addressed the public, he came and addressed the Central Executive Committee, a meeting which I attended. Yeah. Before I attended. So
what
I
I'm
know
saying is there was a split. It does not start then. This is what I'm saying. For example, Rita Nabukenya was murdered before the election. Dan Cheune was murdered before the election.
When the president...
Yasin Kauma was murdered in 2019. So this is why I'm saying that do not limit now to the speech of 2020, 1st December 2021.
Okay. If you can
there was a pattern.
Mr. Mufumbiro, you have been in Uganda and you have seen the conduct of both the civilian and the military. You saw what happened in Arua during the riots, during that elections.
There were no riots in Arua.
You saw what happened in Arua. You saw what happened during the riots here in Kampala. You also, the military officers have not only misbehaved during the riots, others have misbehaved in their own barracks against their own fellow soldiers. They have been shooting one another. You are talking about them shooting, just a moment, mistreating civilians, but they have also abused one another. And these are areas which you must continuously talk about, talk against, and also teach them, but also doing a psychological scanning to find out why is it at times. Recently I read about an officer who went and shot his wife, and he shot somebody who had been staying with her recently in the police about 2 weeks ago. So there is a lot that we must do as a country for continuous improvement. And this is not only happening in Uganda. Recently, you saw what happened in the US when the other man, they knelt on somebody's neck and somebody died, and what the riots that eventually came up. You saw what happened during the elections when they were confirming the elections of President Biden, and what has come out and what the judiciary is doing in America. This is a high developed country. But even with their development and the democracy, these abuses still exist and excesses still exist. The only difference with them is that the law is very specific. Their ability to investigate is very precise, because they take action not only to the military, but even the civilians.
To these crimes by senior members of the party of NOP. So in your party headquarters, are you kind of on tenterhooks that they are coming for you? Because these boys and girls have given information alluding that you, senior members, have lured them into crimes.
You see, when I was joining politics, sure, I thought I had joined the safest game. But the last 5 years have demonstrated to me that it is something not as I expected, but has also assisted me to grow mentally, psychologically, and understand that there's a bigger price to pay. So we live with willingness to pay a bigger price for the liberation of this country. But of course, if you've seen people like Yasin Kauma being shot in cold blood, Daniel Cheyune bleeding to death, Rita Nabukenya bleeding on the deathbed while you're seeing her lose her last breath, then you don't only look out your shoulders for the next day, but you're also sure that you may not be breathing another day. So we kind of have triumphed over the fear of what happens tomorrow with the hope of what we can do today. And that gives us the energy to live another day and build capacity to this revolution that we have sworn to deliver to Ugandans.
You feel you are politically persecuted? Of
course. There is much that you will see and that you will not see. There is political persecution, definitely. The mere fact that we are speaking about people, you see what happened yesterday. For example, there's a young man called Sanya Mohudin, and he had accustomed us to those pictures where he was being strangled as he was leaving the general court-martial. Of course, he was saying very vividly and strongly that he had been arrested for supporting Kyagulanyi Ssentamu being persecuted. There is no other offense. And then later, as he is pleading guilty, he's donning an NRA t-shirt. Now, that swiftness of extreme contradiction creates a hostile witness. And these are not witnesses, these have been suspects.
You've just said that the politics you have entered has shown you that it's a very...
of course, because we are dealing with a military dictatorship that is dressed in a democracy. It has not been an easy task to...
So, but also that can also be understood to mean that any political being can give you surprises at any time, including somebody you thought he was on your side.
We cannot say that, because these people, let me tell you, Mufumbiro is a king. The Mufumbiro is a king. He's a very powerful person with subjects that are following him. He is there by birth, right, in that position.
That is a human being.
For 6 years, he was under house arrest. Even the bishop, to go and pray for him, they had to have clearance from the Special Forces Command. His prime minister is still in prison. His prime minister.
Honorable Dombo,
now,
the issue... you've made your point, sir. Honorable Dombo, the issue of political persecution, when he talks about it, really, he also throws in some examples that are vivid. I mean, how do you defend this? You speak for an Arab government that is running Uganda, but yes, political persecution exists. It does.
You know, during that political contestation,
why that?
The truth becomes the first victim. And at times it becomes difficult to know who to believe. Because during the last elections, I watched many leaders violate the regulations and the modus operandi which had been established by law, and them calling press conferences and giving notice to the police that they were going to rebel against the procedures that had been established. And you know, forewarned is forearmed. So they warned the police and the security agencies armed, and what eventually happened wasn't the best. So, but I want to, on a positive note, to thank the members of the leaders of the National Inter-Platform, because when you look at the way they conducted themselves when they had just formulated the party, it really showed that they didn't know anything. It was still it was an amateurish conduct, because there was hardly anybody who had been in a position of leadership to understand how statecraft works. But of recent, you have heard there are civil engagements with the police. Whereas the other time they said they can't ride the police, they cannot fight the police, they can't do this, the police.
Yeah, because you have inducted them with fire.
Recently, yeah, because where there is a state to create order, and you want to create a demonstration in people's markets and create the confusion, definitely there is a state which has a responsibility to create order. And to me, I want to acknowledge that if they continue conducting themselves like that, we shall have very good politics in the country, we shall have constructive engagement, we shall have better elections, and we shall have better ways of dealing with the issues which emerge because either of the misbehavior of some of the security agencies or because of some of the excesses of our own players in the political field, because this is how civil people work. Even in the state of war, I've been watching what is happening in Ukraine. You find the Ukraine is fighting against Russia, but they meet and discuss, they exchange prisoners, they exchange. If people could do this during a war declared, what should people do during
peace times?
During peacetime and they're dealing in politics. So kindly take the message to the principal and the other leaders that this is how civility works, and when there is civility and all players, then it is easy to identify the erroneous characters or those who use their powers excessively beyond what they are supposed to do. And it becomes easier for the institutions of government and the other players to come in and reinforce, and either it is through parliament or through NGOs or through the civil society organizations, they can come up and you have a more credible way of dealing with the issues.
But was that civility to incarcerate a king for more than 6 years? Was that civility to grind people with mortars in the palace? That civility?
I don't want
that civility for Kibalama to disappear without a trace from your places
I
of
don't
detention?
want to come here and talk about the king.
No, because
but I know.
Talk about Chibalama.
But I know in Kasese there were deaths of policemen. Did you hear about them?
You tell us.
No, I read them in the papers. I don't know how they were.
No, you are the spokesperson.
I know.
Government carried out a massacre on the people of Kasese. Now that you're speaking for the police officers and qualifying the massacre to their death, then tell us.
Please leave me say what I'm saying.
Yeah, because it is what you're saying.
No, kindly leave me give my submission. Because I don't speak for the army, I don't speak for the military. But they have spokespersons.
Speak for
but I read in the papers, I read statements of government that policemen were killed. There was violence in those areas, and since that time, there has been agreement, and the varying parties are finding a mitigating ground because of talking to one another.
But people died.
The situation that existed,
people died. People were murdered.
That's what I'm saying, that people died.
Murdered by who? Blame the murderer.
Who?
You know who murdered them.
Who murdered the police?
No, who murdered them? People were bombarded. They bombarded a whole palace to ashes. You cannot macerate that. You cannot own that. People were murdered. When I talk about people like Rita Nabukenya, I'm talking about a dead person. I'm not talking about a person you're going to see tomorrow. So have decorum to understand that we are talking about dead people murdered by your government. Your government murdered these people.
The issue is we've reached here because of the
civility and murder. I don't understand that.
The issue of political persecution, and he was giving examples, and there are many examples to show.
And so about civility.
Can this end?
Patrick,
can't we have real civility? And people shouldn't be persecuted because of their political
Patrick, in a political contestation,
yes,
which eventually turns out to be violent, it takes two to tango. And you asked him that the people who are in court said that they were led or misled into something. I didn't say it. It is them who said it. And you asked him that, aren't you scared that they could come out to testify against you? That hasn't happened. But definitely, you know, you were there during the massacres. You saw people holding hammers against the heads of a police lady on the ground.
I saw a commando unit.
You saw those individuals and they were...
I saw a commando unit shooting of snipers. Murdering civilians on the street. You come from Kamiati was a food vendor. Just for Kamiati. She was a food vendor. She was moving from E-Tower, taking food to E-Plaza, about 500 meters. She was shot by your people. Dombo.
So may I come in now? You know, it takes civility to listen to others when they are submitting. The policemen who were killed by people from the other side, either in the riots in Kampala or in the riots in Kasese. The policemen who misbehaved, they killed civilians, either in self-defense or in excess conduct of their duties. All this came because the various parties failed to conduct themselves in a civil manner and obeyed the law. And in order to avoid this to happen, we should do what NOPE is doing now.
Let him conclude it.
We should do what NOPE is doing now. Recently, NOPE conducted a political tour. They toured Western Uganda. And the leader of the opposition called a press conference, and he expressed his surprise. He was even wondering why they have been left to tour. But because there have been continuous engagement, just a moment, there have been continuous engagement. When people conduct their affairs in a civil manner, there is continuous engagement. It is very easy to identify the erroneous person, the one who is handling things in excesses, and the members of parliament should demand. The members of parliament should help us and demand a report because the president promised a report. And it is only the members of parliament who have the capacity to demand that. But on the issues of excesses, the areas where the president has come up to acknowledge, to say there have been excesses. Recently, he met the family of Zebra. You saw what happened when they were in State House. To accept and acknowledge that the UPDF went beyond what they should have done, and there were even reparations that were paid. That was a civil conduct by a head of state and commander-in-chief to acknowledge that the soldiers he commands exceeded and they committed a crime, and therefore him, as the commander-in-chief of UPDF, you can even pay reparations because of the things that happened. So what happens on the other side? If on the side of government, the commander-in-chief is taking responsibility and acknowledging the misbehavior of some of his forces, so when the other players on the other side misbehave, who should call them to order? Can you be the chief commander-in-chief on your side? Can you tell your leaders, can you tell the principal on the other side to call his troops and put them to order?
There is no time we have not engaged with the police from inception of our work. So anybody who comes and postures ignorance on the same, it is unacceptable. Every activity we have done, the police has camouflaged on the way, but we have followed the law to the latter because we don't want to be outlaws. That is why we have been able to we have been able to survive.
It is good. Can you repeat that?
That is, we are not outlaws. This is our country. The reason we are patriotic enough to stand against this dirty politics that you have just described is because we want to liberate it better for our children. It's not all about us. And I can tell you, there is nothing that will equate your spewing of propaganda on the murders of our people. And that is where we come from. That these coerced confessions of cases that have not even stood trial. I was telling you that this person is now donning a yellow t-shirt of the NRA in prison. Where could he have got that t-shirt? The people we are talking about, we were seeking for bail. The reason they were taken to the military court martial, and that also must speak to you. He's saying that there was contrast, there was riot in town. Who told you that there is a law that accepts the military to come and operate on Ugandan soil when it is not a state of emergency? The military, it is on record, General Museveni said they deployed a commando unit headed by the late Lokech that came from Somalia and gave us that,
stabilized
and brought that stampede. Yeah, you will be happy to say stabilize, but come here to die, the food vendor. No, well, you will be very excited.
You are quoting the president,
yes,
aren't you?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about murder done by the military on civilians.
So these political detainees.
And you cannot say, as I conclude, you cannot be on national TV and use the excuse of negligence, the excuse of wrong commandeering, because in the book of Art of War it is clear, where a commander gives orders over again and again, and they are not understood, because this seems like they are not understood. But then the truth is being hidden under the carpet. NUP, at the passing of the police, we are termed as militia. When General Museveni was passing the police in Kabali, in Kabali, I think it is last year or a year but one, he congratulated the Special Forces Command for beating Chagulanyi. Now he was bringing the American example. In America, the head of Secret Service was sacked for allowing an intruder attack a presidential candidate. Here, the people who killed Yasin Kauma were given medals.
Okay, so now...
So the pattern of political persecution and change of words, we have given you the examples of Kasese, we gave you the example of Kayunga, I can give you the example of now the supporters of NUP. There is a story out there of the Honorable Namboze, where they were also being lured into coming out to say that actually the Kabaka had given them guns to fight government. So this is a rebel tactic. Why I say that, because they have, you know, when we were growing up, I was not around during the war, but this story has been around. The two of you can confirm or deny it. I hope he will not change it. You are here. They told us that the Museveni army then could camouflage, get into people's homes in Luwero, create mayhem, and then live in disguise that it has been the National Army so as to get support. And this was also attested to by General Kahinda Otafire, who said that they would do crime on the citizens and then as camouflaging as government army and then come back as rebels to have them join their struggle. So the issue of blackmail in terms of murdering people, coercing them, what they don't believe, your enemy. It is done by, it is the DNA of the NRA.
So let's come back. Let's come back to NUP. So these political detainees who you say have given coerced confessions, are you welcoming back into NUP? Have you met them?
They are still in prison.
Yes, but are you welcoming?
First of all, we don't know what terms will be given to them, because you see they are still under hostage. by the state. You see that it is an entire choreographed state. And the state is also trying to run away from the hovering cases of ICC. You know, many of them now. You just heard the other day the commander of the forces crying foul to the American ambassador for supporting NUP and listening to the cases we are putting in those different places. So I know also, as a matter of foreign policy, this forced coercion of truth is as a result of having mitigating factors on many things that are happening as a result of the hard work of many political actors that are opposing the status quo. I also know that over $200 million has been stopped because of crimes on humanity to be accessed by this government. So they are also struggling. The sanctions that are hovering over them, the ICC investigations, because these things take time, but then the truth cannot always be hidden. We will look out for these comrades of ours. We have been looking after their families. We have been visiting them where it has been possible. We are not condemning them, because that is what it is laughable that the person who imprisoned, who murdered our people without offense is the one now trying to celebrate that they are free. Their freedom was born with them, and we are members of many charters, the Rome Statute and others that talk about the fundamentals of human rights. We are yet to understand the sentencing because it is not yet done. The plea bargain, whether they will be cautioned, whether they will be what. But then also the president has been unequivocal, our generational leader, that once this country is liberated, these comrades of ours, these cases and admissions will be expunged from the record such that they are able to live a different life. Because as of now, you know, a person convicted, and these are capital offenses. How do you say that a judicial process where you have had somebody for 4 years for burning down and killing people, that it is going to end in a boardroom meeting with the minister? And why would the minister of youth be? Because what makes it political persecution, that these persons specifically targeted are members of a particular political grouping that won an election, and amid desiring them not to be so declared, many were abandoned up, arrested, killed, all and he tells you, see, it was a confrontational election. He says it was a dirty day. So they are also admitting that they are taking hold of very, very dirty results.
So, but Honorable Emmanuel Dombo, you seem, from where you are, that NUP is a different NUP than the one you saw maybe 3-4 years back, that they seem to be, do you mean they seem to be malleable, that they can work with you now? What makes you think they're a different type of leaders today?
That's what I just said. Because what he's saying now, we weren't saying it 2 years ago. No. They called a press conference.
You have not followed me, man.
They called a press conference.
And I've been speaking.
They called a press conference, and not him, the president. And he announced.
I have been with the president.
And he announced and said he's not going to follow the regulations as prescribed.
Those were regulations.
And
one at a time. Yes.
He announced. So that is the NUP I was talking about, and the things that they did. We have seen the harm's way, the many young people whom they led into harm's way. There are consequences for the actions of the people, of the leaders, and the leaders of groups. The message we give the young people, and they react because we have talked to them. This is not only, I'm not only talking about this in NUP. Even in the NRM primaries, we have had individuals who are leaders who has led the young people into harm's way, and police has come out. We have a young person dying in Katakwi. 2 people, a woman and somebody who died in Katakwi. I accompanied the Secretary General to go and apologize because of the misconduct of the security and because of what happened. This was internally in NRM. So on our side, we try to put right and confess where we acknowledged something has been done because of an exercise we conducted. Because primaries were for NRM, security came to help us, but they mishandled the process and killed killed some people during the exercise, so as the party took responsibility. Even them, because of the words that they have said, the young people they have led into harm's way. And let me tell him that when an election is done and the results are declared, there is a winner, there is a president, and once you acknowledge, I keep hearing them, we won, we did this, as long as you chose the leader of the opposition. When President Museveni opposed what happened in the elections, and this happened, he took, because the courts weren't, actually he filed a case. No, the following day he took off. And he waged the war because the courts were not working. Honorable Kyagulanyi Ssentamu walked into the courts of law. He failed to adduce evidence, and he withdrew saying he was going to the human court.
No, you say you know, so I want to listen.
He went to the People's Court, and but he also picked the leader of the opposition, acknowledging that he was a run-up. And the leader of the opposition is conducting business. He picked Honorable Mpuga. Now he has picked Honorable Senyonyi. So this nomenclature and the discussion of saying we won, we did this, no longer calls. So because the elections were conducted and we have a winner, who is the commander-in-chief, and the members of parliament vote to facilitate the commander-in-chief in order to create sanity and create order in the country, definitely is the responsibility of the NRM leadership in the government to ensure that there is civility and there is sanity for everybody to do their work. For them, I call upon them, because he said here that we're a law-abiding party. We recently they engaged the police. They had a meeting at Kivuli, you saw. A very big delegation from the National Unity Platform. That was the first time.
No. That's what I'm, if I may. We have engaged the police always, but then we do not follow illegal regulations. We follow the Constitution to the latter. He has spoken about their seniority as leaders. I wonder what seniority. How many kilometers of tarmac have you covered in the last 40 years? How many hospitals have you constructed in the last 40 years?
You don't know.
You have been in charge. You don't have any hospital that I can take you on. I'm going to get done.
Anyway, I'll respond.
How many bridges have you built for this nation, you who are senior? You have presided over a nation where rubbish has killed people, and they're talking about seniority. Your seniority has been in corruption.
Those who have
indebted, you listen to me, you've indebted this country times 10 from where you found it. Yeah. You cannot even carry out a census just counting Ugandans who are given birth and those who are, you cannot subtract those who have been given birth to and death to in your government, and you're here posturing seniority. When you cannot give us the number, if you cannot give us how many we are, can you plan for us? Can you be here and tell us that you can plan? Of course, you have been spewing propaganda, and that is what has helped your longevity. And of course, instilling fear with the gun barrel. But if you talk about seniority in performance, the NRA is on zero. Things that you found here, the Uganda Railway is gone. The Uganda Airline is gone. The industrialism, you come from the East, you know what happened with industrialism. It is dead. You have messed up this nation. The road infrastructure is deplorable. The road that goes to your home, you yourself cannot have two cars. At their home, a car must wait, and another waits for them to pass the bridge. Even a bicycle will not pass with the car, even those walking. Now, when he speaks about seniority, what is he talking about? People are sleeping, if we go to Mulago from here, people are sleeping on the roadside to get health facilities. So there is nothing you will posture around. That has been moving around that you are senior. That is,
your record is one thing. So
yeah, their record is absolutely one thing.
Patrick,
you have made your point.
There's another
Mr. Mufumbiro, you have made your point. Yes, you have made your point.
Patrick, I want to thank my brother.
And we're running out of time.
And he knows why we started. That Uganda, we came and took over a failed state. There were no political parties. that were doing civil things that they should do. Right now, we have started the reconstruction of politics, and now we have organized political parties emerging. National Unity Platform is one of them. And we took a decision in government that in order not to benefit from the homosexuality money from outside, that let government begin facilitating political parties and their beneficiaries. That money we give to political parties can construct a hospital. But we need to destabilize politics in the country in order to do certain things. When you look at the infrastructure development, in the entire world, the biggest civil activity a government can do, program, is a national census. And it is one of the indicators of peace under the United Nations. You cannot do a census in Somalia. You cannot do a census in Sudan. You cannot do a census where there is war. You can only do a census where there is peace. So wherever there is a country that has done peace, I mean a census, the United Nations has a criteria of determining which one is peaceful. That's an indication.
So a country that
the results.
Just I'm asking you, you're going to give me the answer.
The results.
For the people, if a country fails to carry out the census.
The results, let me answer. You said the same thing. I'm responding.
Yes, I'm asking.
Yes, let me respond.
Yes.
Are you listening?
I'm asking.
So listen. We conducted a very successful census.
Was it?
Listen, I have a copy of the report in my car, and you know that when people conduct work, you have doctors. Doctors have made mistakes in theaters, and those mistakes have been fatal and people have died. There has been a mistake by you saw, today I was with the director, the ED of UBOS, to ask what exactly happened, and he gave me a copy of the report. When you see the error that was made, extracting statistics of a finished census, because that census, the statistics where they made a mistake, was conducted in 2014. This is 2024. So because of the comparison, now a problem comes in. There is nothing on the figures or a problem on the census that was conducted this year. But at the time of comparison, that's when that issue comes up.
The disabled, giving figures, the disabled in 2014 was 6.4 million. Now they are 3 million.
Has there been a genocide?
Yes, there must have been a genocide.
But, okay.
The people
I have an answer for that one.
The people in Bugisu have also reduced by a half. They say landslides. Now,
that was explained.
Now, you see, if you come out after publishing a report, and then you come out to explain, it speaks to the incompetence, to the ineptness of your system, because you know you're qualifying immunity to come in to explain, and that is what you've done for the years.
You know,
this is what you've done for the years. And then,
this is what we're going to do.
Kamala, this is what I wanted to end with. On his,
I'll end with the response to that one.
You spoke about choosing of the leader of opposition and the president, and I think I can teach this today because probably I've heard it from so many naive people of our constitution. Our constitution, by construction, the president is elected on his individual merit, and parliament is elected inter alia with the presidency, but they do not form the nexus of government. I can give you this example. For example, it is very possible for Kyagulanyi Robert Sentamu to be president of Uganda, but have no numeric strength in parliament to have the majority in our democracy and construction of our constitution. So whether he was president, by construction of our politics in the constitution, the legislature would have gone further using the constitutional criteria of numerical strength to choose the status quo of parliament. So it is naivety. I have heard many of your colleagues, probably you will teach them that it would have happened anyway because we had 57 members of parliament. The presidency in Uganda is not determined by the number of members of parliament,
it's not a parliamentary
because
democracy.
we don't follow a parliamentarily democracy.
Okay.
I want to.
I hope now you will be comfortable.
And that's your concluding remark because he has finished.
that exercise, once my brother, Honorable Chagulanyi, accepted the outcome of the elections.
But have you understood?
Listen, let me respond. And he went to court, because he went to court to contest the outcome.
And you took the case.
And he ran out.
The SFC.
And he ran out.
Let him conclude.
And he ran out of the courts. He lost the right and authority to come complain, perhaps to go back and begin planning for the subsequent elections. But he must know that when the elections were conducted, we have a government which has been established, which has a responsibility of maintaining law and order, which it will, and also to ensure that they collect the resources from the people of Uganda and distribute them according to the problems that we have.